I mean, actually, let me preface this by saying that I think teenagers get a really bad press. I think the really badly behaved people in our society are the adults, and the teenagers in some ways are role models. They do wonderful stuff. And I'm not just saying that because my teenage daughter's here. But anyway, so we know there's novelty-taking and risk-taking, novelty-seeking and risk-taking going on. There's also that incredible moodiness and dysphoria, the kind of grumpy thing that happens in the teenage years, which is quite interesting too. And then we've got this dynamic social network, and they're always on Facebook, they're always texting each other, they're always on emails, they hang around malls in big sort of loose gaggles. I often imagine what would it be like if professors hung around in malls like teenagers, a bunch of boring guys with beards hassling pensioners in the mall. It's really, for psychologists, it's absolutely fascinating. And there's this sexual awakening going on. These hormones are going mad, testosterone and estrogen and all sorts of experimentation in that regard. And then there's this sort of lack of higher cognitive function. Executive function is still emerging, and the ability to plan and have insight into your own behavior and the ability to have foresight is somewhat lacking in these teenagers. But actually, some of these things are really good. They're evolutionarily adaptive. If you think of that novelty-seeking, that dynamic sociability, that sensation-seeking, it gets teenagers out of the house. Taking risks is almost essential from an evolutionary perspective to get these youngsters into their own nest, get them into their own territory, into their own space. These are highly adaptive behaviors. We should be encouraging it. We don't want our teenagers still hanging around at home when they're 45, So let's nurture these sort of behaviors. And linked to that is probably this dysphoria as well, this rejection of the parents, that, dad, that sort of stuff. That's pretty good. You have to reject your parents to get away from them so as you can set up your own relationships, your own family. I came all the way to Australia from Edinburgh to get away from my parents, and they paid my fare. They really encouraged me. And there's these enormous appetites that teenagers have as well, which is wonderful. The Hungry Jacks, McDonald's, KFC thing that's going on. But these are growing bodies. They need a lot of calories. And also from an evolutionary perspective, they have to compete with much bigger animals. So if a resource comes along, if they suddenly have access to a lot of calories very quickly, they're going to stuff them down. They need these calories. And often they'll be outcompeted by much larger animals. So try and understand binging as being a good thing, as a positive, adaptive thing for an adolescent animal. And when we look at alcohol, in fact, alcohol is one of the most calorie-dense substances on the planet. And so it's, sculling an alcopops is a way of getting a lot of calories into your system very, very quickly. And you can sort of analyze teen binge drinking from that evolutionary perspective, and it can be quite informative to think of it in that way.
So to the challenge. Well, the numbers won't surprise you. Suicide is the leading cause of death for young people aged 15 to 24 in Australia. Mental health difficulties affect 1 in 4 young Australians. Again, it will come as no surprise. Pat McGregor, who is Executive Director at Origin, was made Australian of the Year last year. So mental health is on the political agenda, which is actually a good thing. When I say I don't like to problematise young people, the only way we get the ear of politicians is to actually talk about the numbers and the numbers of young people affected. So 1 in 4 young Australians, 15.5% of young men, 9.8% of young women aged 16 to 24 experience a substance use problem in the past 12 months. To the numbers, now when we did our bid with the Department of Innovation, talked about the cost. And the reason we talked about the cost was, again, because we wanted to see an investment back into youth mental health that was going to improve outcomes for young people. And the costs are not only financial, as you will know. The costs are related to the impact on the quality of a young person's lives, the relationships that they have, the jobs that they may or may not do, the way in which they live their lives. And these figures come from Access Economics, and they come from Connecticut Consulting, John Mendoza. So suicide costs Australia $17.5 billion each year. Mental ill health or mental illness costs $10.6 billion, reduced wellbeing $20.5 billion. So $48.6 billion each year. This is not an ethical rationalisation for us investing in the mental health of our nation. This is actually a fiscal responsibility that we should all share in terms of how do we actually invest in young people's mental health for the betterment of our society. you.